Let's move like slightly out of the technicalities and more into I think people wanting to break into gaming and some considerations they need to have about multiplayer gaming. And
Yeah,
I think you're best suited to answer this as well, right? So
yeah.
if someone's super enthusiastic about this and they really want to get into the industry or probably create the game, whether it's single player, multiplayer. Let's talk about multiplayer only mainly. They have high aspirations, let's say. What are some things they need to know? It can be like a toolkit, it can be just thoughts that you'd like to leave them with. So let's start off with people who are new to coding.
Okay, so new to coding and you want to build a multiplayer game from scratch, right? Uh, what would you want to do?
You're free to
So
say don't do it also.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah.
I think my first thing would definitely be don't do it. I think the first thing would be to build a single player game. Build something small, put something out there, get some feedback, get some validation, and most importantly, get some experience using whichever engine it is, Unity, Unreal, CoDot, whatever you want to use, because I would say multiplayer is an extension of single player in terms of like whatever you use in single player, a lot of it gets reused as well because a lot of concepts carry over and everything sort of carries over. So the things that change is how the client interacts with the server, but everything else like playing the particle effects, the explosions, the sounds, all those parts are the same in games in general, right? It's just that where is it played is a different part. That's the only thing that varies.
Mm.
So my first piece of advice is please start with something that you're comfortable with, right? Build something small, a single player game. If you want to build multiplayer, if you're really adamant about it, sure, but again, keep your scope really small. Like build a card game, because in a card game you don't have to think about real time, like what happens if somebody's lagging, because even if you have like 300 ping latency, that's fine because it's just a card game. It's not dependent on like real time snappy actions. It's not a first person shooter game. It's not a shooter game. So I would definitely start there. But once you get a hang of the engine that you like, and some of the tools I mentioned mirror, so that's something you can use if you're using Unity. But any tool, whatever it is, tools don't really matter that much. um, so once you get a hang of that, I would say the most important thing is um, figure out how to use your IDE. This is something they don't teach. This is a very unconventional tip, and they don't teach this in college, or at least we weren't really exposed to it. But these programs that we use to edit our code, so the IDEs, they are actually really powerful.
Mm.
And Pawan, when we did some of our lab programming, we used some of these, but the only thing we did is like wrote the code and pasted the code and saved the code.
Yeah, yeah,
Right? We didn't, there are all those buttons on the top and the bottom that we saw, but we're like, what does this do? There's a
yeah.
big button. Yeah, exactly. There's a big button that says debug. There's a big button that says, and there are multiple options, right? You can do so much with a file. You can refactor it. Uh, you can save hours and hours of your time with an IDE. The biggest thing, even with an IDE, is something called a debugger.
Mm.
Uh, what we usually do when we debug usually is we do console logs. So we're used to this. This is something, print statements basically, right? In
Yeah.
Python we do a print statement and check, is this value correct, right? Is this value what we expected to be at this point? uh, how One thing I really appreciate about the game industry is that we invest a lot in these tools, and the tool that I use personally is called Rider by JetBrains. JetBrains is a very popular company that makes these IDs, and the debugger is super powerful. So it live replays what just happened in the whole game,
Oh, nice.
right? So pretty much when you click on play and you simulate whatever, and then you have a breakpoint, and it plays up until whatever happened until then, right? So
Mm.
you can see all the variable values, you can see what happened before this, what the function call was before this function, and then before that, and then before that. You can trace the whole flow,
That's
right?
great.
Imagine if you knew how to use something like this in college,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
that's
So it would be a game changer. I mean,
exactly.
it really made me kind of fall in love with these tools because it gives you so much perspective.
Mm.
So yeah, that's something I would definitely invest my time in if I was just starting out as well. So yeah.
That's great. I mean, if there's so much out there already, then there's pretty much no excuse. Just pick probably like a problem or something that you think is really fun, and it's games. It's meant
Yeah.
to be fun. It's bound
Yeah.
to be fun. So
Yeah.
pick probably like a little project and get started with it. I guess that kind of sums up
Yeah.
what you're gonna say as well.